is a very, very big threat that we're having. A lot of the things you don't hear about.
Wait, they said what is a very big threat we're having?
Islamic terrorism. They
I'm
actually use
sorry,
the
can
word
you give me
terrorist.
one quote or one phrase or one anything where the CIA or the
Sure,
FBI have come out and said that Islamic extremism is a big threat to the United States?
sure. Give me a sec. I'll link you something.
But you can't, I follow this and I haven't heard this statement. I feel like if I would have heard this statement, I would have, or if this statement was issued, I would have heard about it.
Okay.
Because right now our intelligence community seem to be more concerned with Russia than Islamic extremism. Actually, I think Christian right-wing groups in the United States, actually, didn't they say the sovereign citizen people were the biggest threat right now in terms of terrorist attacks in the United States?
Say that again.
I think that weren't like the sovereign citizen people like the most heavily investigated domestic terrorists in the United States right now, I thought.
That would be pretty hilarious. I don't know. I haven't actually heard that specifically. Hold on. Let me read this article really fast. Try and get the quote specifically.
Pentagon orders, oh, this is the Washington Times. The Pentagon is ordering the
That's
top
fine.
brass to incorporate climate change into virtually everything they do. This doesn't sound like Islamic extremism. But maybe you could argue that Islam... Actually, there's a good example. So I think one of the ways Islamic people, ISIS kills people by burning them to death. And you could argue that they utilize fossil fuels when they set people on fire in the cages and that could contribute to polluting the environment. There's an argument for how radical Islamic extremism might manifest itself into a negative impact on our environment.
Um,
I'm trying to find arguments for you, dude. I'm sorry. I'm trying as hard as I can.
You're not doing a very good job.
Yeah. Here's CNSnews.com. This is from 2016. CIA director. Terrorist groups are driven by this ideology that is not rooted in Islam. CIA director John Brennan said Wednesday, words or comments that taint a religion as being the source of the problem are detrimental to our interests in dealing with the Muslim world. So this is the CIA director saying that people like you are detrimental to our interests in dealing with the Muslim world. That's my argument.
Okay.
Brennan argued that incendiary remarks about Islam do not help to arrest this cancer that has taken over so many of the communities because a lot of the underlying conditions that exist within the Middle East and Africa, South Asia areas, because of economic deprivation, political disenfranchisement, and lack of opportunity. Wow, great. Do you think this guy watches my stream? Maybe he just gets all of his ideas from me. I don't know. He said
You're
that
talking about the CIA director?
Yeah, he said that fanatics, extremists, and terrorists are driven by this ideology that is not rooted in Islam.
Okay. Is that? I'm not sure. Is that what you're saying your argument is?
All right, listen. I'll give you the last word. All right. What do you want to tell everybody before we're done?
I don't know. I think you weren't really interested in having a conversation about the actual impact of it. You wanted something to satisfy your desires that was impossible to give.
It's not, though, because I gave you a million
really
examples. Okay, can you try to have a conversation with me where you act like me and I'll act like you? And I'll see if I can give an example of anything. The problem is that you just don't.
Say that again.
Let's have a
conversation
reverse
where I act like you.
Yeah, let's have a reverse debate where you'll take the side and I'm attacking Christians in the United States, okay? And we'll have a reverse debate where you ask the questions and I'll try to give answers that would satisfy me, okay? My problem with you isn't that I came into this conversation expecting unrealistic things. The problem is just that you know very little to nothing about what you're talking about. So now let's switch the roles, okay? You ask me the questions about Christians in the United States, okay? So my contention is that Christianity is very damaging to the United States, okay? Now go.
I would agree with that contention, though. Are you asking me to? I mean, I don't really have
Okay, I can give you specific.
On the contrary.
I can give you specific examples in the United States of specific policies, specific policymakers, and specific voter bases that are leading to the detriment of the United States. That are detrimental to the United States.
I'm sure you can, man.
But you can't give me any of that for Islam.
It wasn't. It was never going to be a discussion about tangible impact. That was never the intention.
So then the intention was to talk about a potentially bad ideology that might grow in the future and maybe might lead to some possibly negative things somewhere in the future. That was the point of this debate.
As well as the really ignorant statement you made in the video, claiming that things happening outside of the U.S. do not impact the U.S. That those ideologies and the terrorism that's happening outside of U.S. soil, for some reason, has no impact on our day-to-day lives.
I don't think at the moment, I don't think it does. I don't think so. And you haven't provided me a single reason to believe otherwise, other than maybe in the future, a growing number of people might be swayed to a radical ideology that might manifest itself in a negative way in the future.
Do you personally believe we should be doing anything right now in the Middle East? Meddling at all?
That's a really complicated question, dog. I don't know the answer to that. I don't like our policy now, but it's really complicated.
I mean...
But what we do in the Middle East right now has nothing to do with Islamic terrorism. Has absolutely nothing to do with Islamic terrorism.
It does.
It doesn't, though. To somebody that's uninformed, it might. If you get all of your news from Breitbart or something, maybe. But it has to do with geopolitical interests.
I've opened Breitbart maybe once to see what the fuss is. That's not.
Okay.
I would claim that I'm actually a lot more liberal than you are. I'm just.
What are the issues in the Middle East that have to deal with Islamic terrorism? I guess
genocide en masse?
Like what?
Let's go to BBC Arab or BBC.com, and let's see what happened today in the Middle East, right? About Islamic extremism.
Okay, I really hate to do this to you.
I'll give you a few.
No, here. Okay, I just want to ask a question. I'm not trying to be mean, okay? But you're the one that tweeted the really inflammatory things. Can you tell me where ISIS came from?
Can I tell you where ISIS came from?
Yeah.
Like who had originated them?
Sure. Yeah, just like the general foundings. We don't even need exact names.
I would say the U.S. has a big role in that. That if you look at the history with Osama bin Laden through the radicalization from the Egyptian man that I can't remember his name.
It's okay to say you don't know.
What's that?
Can you tell me anything about the founding of ISIS, about how it started?
Yeah, I was telling you right now.
You're not right now. No, this has nothing to do with any of it.
Are you saying that Al Qaeda and
Al Qaeda a little bit? You're getting closer, warmer.
Okay, I. If you were to allow me to finish my point, then yeah, I would tell you that.
You started talking about Osama bin Laden. I don't know why, but okay, go ahead.
Well, he was the leader of Al Qaeda.
Okay.
Did you know that?
Yep. But did you know that Osama bin Laden wasn't the one that? Or no, I'm sorry. I don't want to fill in any of the blanks for you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Do you think Osama bin Laden was in charge of Al Qaeda when ISIS broke off from them? I just gave you a little bit of the answer in the question, but you know that he wasn't, right? So,
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Do you think that Osama bin Laden was the one in charge of Al Qaeda when?
No, he wasn't.
When ISIS broke off from him? Okay. So I don't know why you brought up Osama bin Laden.
No. Are you asking me for the?
I'm just asking you how ISIS started. How did ISIS start? Just give me a kind of an example of what's going on.
There was a Jordan man from I don't remember any of the names specifically, but there was a Jordanian man who I believe he had been radicalized in somewhere between 2005 and 2008, and there was already a terrorist group after the Fallujah fall that was in the wake of Al Qaeda essentially, and from them they sort of merged into what we would consider to be ISIL, I believe was the official name for it, or sorry, not the Lebanon one, the Iraq one, which was I think it was just a 3-letter Islamic State in Iraq.
Wait, what did you think the ISIL was from? That was the Lebanon one you said?
What's that?
You said that the ISIL was the one that formed in Lebanon?
Or no, Libya. I'm sorry, I misspoke there.
What was ISIS? ISIL? Oh, because ISIL was the Islamic State of Iraq and Libya, right?
Yes. Well, no. I before it was ever ISIL, it was just the Islamic State in Iraq.
Okay.
Right.
No.
Have I been wrong?
Yeah.
No. Give me an example. Of,
I mean,
of what
ISIL stands for the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. It had nothing to do with Libya, but.
Oh,
All right, keep going.
So when it first formed, it wasn't just the Islamic State of Iraq.
No, keep going.
Well, I wish I would have anything in front of
me.
No,
you just don't know anything about what you're talking about. You tweeted at me.
I'm giving you a
no,
very
you don't, dude. You don't know anything about what you're talking. You're like totally fucking. You're like fucking furiously googling shit. You're like, oh shit, like I don't fucking know anything about this shit. Like,
okay.
What was? Do you know the name of the Al Qaeda guy that was leading the Al Qaeda when ISIS broke off from them?
No, I don't know.
Do you know the name of the guy that leads ISIS now that we're looking for in Mosul? That's being chased to the west.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
Okay, yeah, okay, you got that one at least. All right. Do you know what ISIS majorly recruited from? Which group of people they recruited from when they were in Iraq?
From when they were in Iraq?
Yeah.
Some form of Sunni Islamic terrorism. I don't know the name of the group.
Okay.
Is this where you give me the answers and
no, I don't need to give you the answers. You can go read them yourself.
I have yet to see what I've been wrong in thus far. What the
I don't know, man.
Given.
I'm not sure. It's a crazy world. Okay. I mean, I think we're good. I don't think you're equipped to have this conversation. I'm not sure why. I don't know if you thought that you would come on here and I would just be like, I would be totally ignorant of everything, and you thought that you could really get away with trying to have a conversation that you were totally ill-equipped to have, or why would you even ask me to go into this area if you didn't even know like where ISIS came from? Why would you have the confidence to ask me that? Especially when I got raped by that Ryan Dawson dude. You don't think I've done like a little bit of reading on this so that I wouldn't stumble into this accident again? Like,
if you equated initially in your video with ISIS, or sorry, not ISIS, but Islam and Christianity, you equated the two, and you actually made the assumption that Christianity had a much larger role, a much bigger impact.
What does this have to do with anything that we were just talking about?
That it has nothing to do with the founding. I don't give a shit about the founding.
Oh no, I was just curious. Well, but I know you don't give a shit about the founding, but that's a really important part of where ISIS comes from. You see, because
I have a general understanding.
You have no understanding.
You have yet to show. You have yet to tell me what I've.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me give you a more general question. Okay, why do you think ISIS was able to form and recruit?
Well, like any terrorist cell, there was turmoil in the area, and people were really pissed at the mainly the United States oppression, and
you don't know what you're talking about. The Sunnis weren't pissed at the United States at all. The Sunnis wanted the United States to be more involved instead of leaving the current leader in charge. The reason why ISIS was able to recruit in the north was because of Sunni oppression by the government. That's the answer. That's the easy, simple answer. Like, if you have any idea what you're talking about.
Can I ask you a question?
What?
What does any of this have to do with the ideology behind Islam?
Because people like you get fed certain narratives and you believe them without understanding anything that you're saying. So like right now, maybe you'll change your mind a little bit after this conversation. Listen, right now, you know in your mind, you know it's true. ISIS formed because Islam is a toxic ideology, and ISIS was founded on Islam being a bad ideology. That's why earlier you argued you can draw direct lines to everything that ISIS is doing, to the fact that they are Islamic, that they are following in the footsteps of Muhammad. But the fact is, you don't know anything about ISIS. You have no idea who they are, where they formed from. You said it was the Islamic State of Iraq and Libya, dog. I don't think you can find Libya on a map, okay? You have no idea. Do you know what continent Libya is in?
Egypt.
All right, listen, I love you, dude. It's been fun. I'll see you later, okay? I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. I actually can't. I can't deal with it. Is this what an average Trumple sounds like? I can't do it. I wouldn't be able to have... I take back everything I said. I don't want to talk to any more Trumples. I think we have to move on, okay? I think we have to be done with politics. If this is discourse in the United States today, then I just have to fucking kill myself. Like, I just have to kill myself. It has to be all over, dude. I don't know. I'm not even sure. Yeah, that's it. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore, all right? I can't do it. Okay, I'm sorry. I sounded like a huge dick, okay? I know I did. I sounded really mean this discussion. Hold on one second.
Now that the election is over, The lunatics can no longer yell and scream about Clinton. This email that the last visible boogeyman that they can use to induce fear is to yell and scream about Islamic. This migrant that Russia loves these lunatics.
My problem was, this was the guy's tweets at me, okay? I just watched your discussion on Islam versus Christianity in the US. You have a laughable understanding of geopolitics.
Destiny PLS, don't kill yourself. Be yourself.
It's like this is your first day being involved with politics, LeMayo. It's unfortunate that you only choose to debate the lowest common denominators. I'll handle this, Xenon 1. Please, Destiny, allow me to educate you. I wish you had the bollocks to debate someone with any critical thinking skills. Right? I'm sorry, but this is the reason. Like, these are how these people, and I know, and like, I'm making fun of this guy in particular, but I guarantee you that if I pulled on any random Trumple onto my stream, it would be the exact same thing. They'd have no fucking idea whatsoever what they're talking about. Like, these are all trolls? Is every single person that I argue with on Twitter a troll? You can't just keep saying they're all trolls. They're not, dude. Trump is the president of the United States. Trump is the president. Is every single person, are all of these people in the Donald, are these guys all trolling? Did everybody that go to the poll booths troll? Did everybody that vote for Trump, are they all trolls?
Egypt is my favorite continent.
Is JonTron trolling?
Like any sort of arguments, they were really circle jerking it. So I don't know.
Hey,
Like,
oh wait, here's the man of the hour. How are you feeling?
Wait, are we
dude? You
circle
alright?
jerking in here? Oh, I love
No.
circle
no.
jerking.
How
We're
you
all
are? You
hoping
alright? You
you
want to
can
take a
bait
walk?
JonTron.
No,
Dude.
he would never agree to do it.
Well, no,
He was
you know,
terrified to say anything on Sargon's last night.
That's because the only knowledge he has of politics is from fucking Gamergate. He has no idea what he's talking about anything, but for some reason he's decided that he wants to be political now.
Anyway, Destiny,
What's up, buddy?
we had to push an update to the mod pack, so there's
Oh,
a new
no.
Oh god, what's the update?
No more fruit.
fixed. Yeah, we
Let Mike
had
spam it.
to remove fruit because it was causing a ton of lag. We added forestry, and we updated Botania, so it'll stop bitching at you when you start the game.
Wait, why can't wait, so there's no fruit now, or can we just make it so they only drop when you break the leaves?
Actually, apple trees work. Apple trees work. Well, those are vanilla.
Specifically, Terraqueous's fruit will no longer spawn. Pam's Harvest Craft still will. So if you have Pam's trees and their fruit, it will still work. Terraqueous's will not.
Fuck. That's okay.
It's not the end of the world. It's not the end. And we got forestry.
What does
so we
forestry
come
do?
up- Amazing stuff.
It's a pretty
Automated
big fucking mod.
farms, bees, trees, butterflies, and mail.
yourself.
These are fucking OP.
These are really good if you have the patience to deal with them.
Oh yeah, and because we added new world gen, the world border has been expanded to 12k in both directions.
Yeah, but we'll only see those if we go to the edge. So basically, we all have to move to
Fuck
the
that
edge
shit.
to go see new shit.
Just
Listen
use
here,
the
son.
map.
Calm down.
Okay, have fun, guys. Wait, do you have like a link to the new mod meme or whatever?
Yeah,
It's
it's sticky
pinned,
than
yeah.
It's
Minecraft.
pinned.
Okay.
Don't kill yourself. Like, it's okay.
I'm sorry, dude. I can't, dude. I can't do it, man. Oh, shit. Fucking Libya in Egypt. Oh, fuck me, dude. It's too much. Allow me to educate you. Allow me to educate you, Steven.
Hello.
What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up, dude?
Oh, your mic actually sounds decent for once. You don't have it like a million miles away from your face?
Nah. So, From your conversation with this dude,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that his point was. Wait, hold up. I need to mute your stream.
Okay.
Jesus. Okay. Whoa. What's up?
Oh, I don't know if this guy is ironically tweeting or what.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think his point was that if Islam was eventually to overtake, it would be a negative, and I don't think that if you can't agree on that, then the conversation was always pointless, right?
Wait, can't agree on what?
That Islam overtaking, as he put it, like with the 60% would be a negative.
Oh, I think it would probably be a negative. I don't think he needed to make that argument. I would have considered that immediately. I don't want any more religious people in the West, but
Sure. Yeah, and atheism is faster growing, I believe. So that's like, just because it's growing, it doesn't mean that it continues to grow. Like everything stagnates and finds at
yeah,
stays
sure.
at a
Different
balance.
things contribute to its growth as well. I think
Sure.
that it'll probably grow a little bit faster now. I mean, as we move to ban all Muslims from the country, I think it's pretty easy to radicalize people.
Sure, but there's a point also to be made for that. If something's spreading like virally, right, and you think it's a negative, it's much easier, I think, to contain while it's small rather than when it gets out of control, right?
Sure.
And that's I think where he was going, comparing it to Nazism.
Yeah, but
So-
then he realizes that's an absurd statement because I don't think the majority of Americans are about to become radical Islams. Or
yeah, I
radical
don't think so
Muslims, like-
either. Right. I don't think so either. So yeah, that's where his argument would fall short. But I'm saying when you said what happens if it reaches 60%, he should have said, this is what happens.
Oh, yeah, sure. But the problem was that he just hadn't thought through anything he'd said. Like, he came into the conversation with Islam is bad and I think it's growing, but without knowing
Right,
anything
like, he
more,
was just
and then
being
wanted to have a
addicted to it,
detailed
yeah.
conversation about it. Like, why would you tweet aggressively at somebody when you know the types of conversations I have, and you know that for better or for worse, I've spent a lot of time reading on a lot of this shit, and then come on and try to talk about very vague conjecture with no basis behind it. Like, why would you put yourself through that? That seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree. I think the guy was an asshole because of the tweets, right? But like yeah, I don't know. Like the guy was a dick, but like I think he would have had points if you agreed to some of these things, like it.
Yeah,
being
maybe,
a
but I don't want
bit-
to. But the problem is, I'm not into. Did you see the debate I had with the Ryan Dawson dude? Or
No, I
with Martin
didn't see
Shkreli, the conversation I had with him?
I saw a bit of that.
Sure. So, like, with somebody like Martin Shkreli, I'm not going to sit there and debate him anything on pharmaceuticals because I can't. He's infinitely fucking more knowledgeable than
Sure.
me in that area, right? Or the Ryan Dawson dude on the Middle East. I'm not going to sit there and tell him that he's wrong about anything. Like, as soon as
Right,
somebody is
right.
established that they know that much more than me, then it's going to be an FAQ. I'm just going to ask some questions because I have nothing to contribute to that conversation. It was clear coming in that this guy didn't know anything. So why would he assume that he could come in and try to present an argument when I had more depth of every side of the issue? I could argue his own side. I could make better arguments for his side than he was even able to make, right? If I wanted to argue on his side, I would argue that if you look at the influx of refugees, of certain types of refugees into Europe, you see that there are some places that are becoming ghettoized in areas. You see that there are some Islamic enclaves. When I said, do you see Sharia law appearing in the United States? If he knew anything, he could have said, well, in Europe, there are places where a lot of Muslims have banded together and are kind of enacting mini Sharia laws in small places. Maybe this could happen, right? Those would have been legitimate arguments, but he couldn't even make those arguments because he was totally ill-informed on everything he was talking about.
Yeah, and he went in for a debate and he got one, right? But
I
yeah.
guess.
So yeah, but on your tweet before of the entire world has been making progress for the past 50 years. Responding to this guy because some dude says in this globalized time everyone should look out for each other. No country comes first. And this Jontron show says that's completely unrealistic and naive, right? To which you answer that the world has been making progress. But what do you think that leads to? Like a whole world society? I heard you talking about culture as
So the
as a
problem,
negative, right?
So your goal, if you look at it, this is a very multifaceted question. If you look at things from just the economic standpoint, hold on, I gotta make sure this guy's not in my chat because he's gonna get way too big of an ego. All right, he's not. Okay, so if you look at it from an economic standpoint, economic integration is crucial to thriving economies. One of the reasons why the United States is so successful is because our economy is insanely integrated. When I say that, what I mean is if you go to a store, you don't know if you're buying from a store that was founded in Texas. You don't know if the products are shipped from Mexico. You don't know, where the employees were hired from, right? You don't know any of these things because our integration is extremely successful, right? You can do business across state borders. You can go to another state and buy, like you can do all sorts of stuff, and that's awesome. We have the same currency throughout all the states. We have the same general laws throughout all of the states. These are good things, right? If you look at the goal of the European Union, it's a similar thing. You get a lot of different countries together with different trade policies, different agreements, different currencies, different all of these things, and then you move to regulate all of these things and normalize all of them between all the countries. You achieve greater financial immigration or integration, which is a very multifaceted thing, which every economist will tell you this is a positive thing. You usually want less barriers to trade. You want less money to going things like tariffs or taxes or whatever, right? Do you agree with that much?
Yeah,
at least that like
sure. And Latin America has its own union as well, right?
Okay.
But that's still blocks of land, right? That share something in common. I think that the problem here is that, and I'm sorry for going here because I'm not really debating you on politics, but rather,
sure.
So the thing is, people are selfish, right? Because your experience is all you have.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, you will always become attached to the land where you're born, whatever the demarcations might be.
And I agree with that to some extent, okay? If I were to go and move to like I always use Lithuania as an example, I feel bad, or like Romania. If I were to go to move to one of these Eastern European countries, I would probably be like top 1% of their wealth, right? So why wouldn't I do that? Why don't I want to go there and be part of their, financial elite?
Why?
To some extent, it's because, I guess I like the United States and I'm living here, but it's also because the United States is a better place to be because everybody here is better, right? Not better like in some like, better sense, but better like economically, educatedly, right? When everybody in your society is doing better,
right?
Yeah, when everyone in your society is doing better, it's good for everybody. How much better would, oh, fuck, is it San Francisco, Oakland, that divide where you go across the bridge to the violent black people?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, how much better would it be if Oakland wasn't a fucking shithole, right? Or how much better would it be in my own city if North Omaha or South Omaha wasn't a shithole? Or how much better would it be for Chicago and Detroit if those places weren't shitholes, right? If these places rise up and do better, it's better for everybody. Rich people that own construction companies have greater opportunity to move in and do things. People invested in education have more people that are educated in the country to draw ideas from, to collaborate with, right? NASA, people interested in scientific research have a larger...
But you're still talking about borders within a country.
Okay, yeah,
right?
hold on. But I'm only talking about within the country. We can expand that to the world as well. Imagine if Mexico, if I could snap my fingers and turn Mexico into like another Canada where it's doing really great economically, that's our illegal immigration problem solved overnight. Right? If Mexico was a strong, thriving country that wasn't being held captive by the cartels and the fucking drug trade, that had way more economic opportunity and better educational opportunities available to it, they wouldn't be fleeing across the border to get to the United States. So Mexico doing better.
So what you're proposing is that the U.S. reaches and economically helps the countries out, just makes Mexico grow?
Sure, in ways that make sense. Things like NAFTA, where you negotiate trade deals where, hey, you guys are really fucking good at maybe agriculture or maybe doing this manufacturing, car parts. We get a lot of car parts. If you own a car, you've got parts in the car from Mexico, right? You guys are really good at doing car parts. Let's make an agreement that facilitates the trade of car parts from your country, and then you can get other things from our country. So now the poorest people in your country pay less for goods. They have more money to spend on other things. They have more economic opportunity available in their country because now they have a massive trading partner with the United States where they can export goods and get jobs and factories working there, right? These are good things that are mutually beneficial. We both capitalize on our comparative advantage to make both countries better. The beauty of economics, and anybody that studies economics, right, or takes an intro class will tell you, right? The beauty of economics is that it's not a zero-sum game. Everybody can win in economics. It doesn't have to be winners and losers. But when you talk about things like Trump wanting to put a 20% tariff on everything coming from Mexico, why would we want to ruin that country any more than it already is when that's just going to increase the number of people illegally immigrating? That's why they illegally immigrate. It's not because they want to come and rape people in America. It's because Mexico fucking sucks depending on where you live. So they come here instead.
So you would propose, you don't put much value on, I think, on culture and such, right?
I try to be empathetic towards it. Personally, no, but I mean, I try to understand.
Right, exactly. I don't either. I don't give a fuck about culture, right? But it is humanity. Like it's attached to the culture, right? It's
Sure, but I mean, like,
it's-
nobody
it's
is
part of what defines you.
Yeah, but nobody is stopping you from celebrating a culture, firstly. And secondly, culture changes. How many times do all of these guys that say they hate fucking Mexican culture and they want to keep their own white culture go to fucking Taco Bell for a quesadilla? Like, culture changes, right? Like, culture evolves, it grows up over time. Maybe in the future, our culture is a little bit more Mexicanized. And in the future, those Mexicans coming over here, their culture is probably going to be a little bit more Americanized. There's no point in all of human history where culture has been frozen in a time vial and then not changed for 500 years. That's just not how it goes. All of our greatest food, all of our great art, all of our great entertainment. Look at the most popular artist fucking today is rap music that came partially from fucking Africa, like in terms of like rhythmic stuff, right? And all of the influences, the early influences on those musicians all came from Europe, right? Every culture comes from other places. I don't see anything wrong with letting our culture evolve or change a little bit, as long as you're not chopping people's heads off to do it.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. But I think that conflict can't. It's very difficult for conflict to ever cease to exist.
Yeah,
right?
but
'Cause
while
there's
that is
always gonna
true,
be-
while that is true, the world today is better than it ever has been in all of human history. There's far less
But
conflict
also
today.
on the back of war sometimes, Stephen. Though, like computers exist because of war.
Sometimes, yeah, sure, but I mean,
The internet
NASA
too, no?
existed, and that was only the Cold War. There weren't any actual shots traded there, and we're making great strides.
No, but we got to the moon thanks to the Cold War, right?
Yeah, sure, but we've also made a ton of scientific advances in the last. Do you take the cell phones? I mean, we get a lot of. We can still spend money on like military R&D without necessarily being in war, right?
Right, but there's no driver. That's the problem. Is when you start talking about humanity, right? Like there has to be a driver, a need.
Yeah, but I
Like,
think
that's
the
what-
need for money and capital can drive itself. I mean, China's economy has been a massive giant growing, and they haven't grown on the back of any war. Facebook and Google weren't
Japan as
created
well,
because of
right?
war. Yeah, Japan has grown a lot. Japan is a very unique country with a very unique existence past the 1940s, but
Right, they're not allowed to have a military, I believe.
yeah, well, the United States babysat them hardcore after the Cold War. They also completely locked down all of their borders and went hardcore protectionist on their policies to grow their companies. And they're also facing very unique problems as well with a dying society, people that don't have kids, their birth rates have plummeted. People are very depressed there and kill themselves. Fucking school children kill themselves more than any other group in Japan. I don't like to talk about.
That's
I don't like to.
that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, well, I don't like to talk about Japan because Japan is like a really unique, like they have like a very, very unique culture. They've got unique advantages and problems, but
Yeah, I guess I believe my opinion comes from a place of which I think that there's always going to be bad and good, and that bad is one of the drivers of good.
well, no, it doesn't necessarily have to be. Again, like what was the bad that made Facebook or Google? Like,
I mean, it doesn't have to be, right? But it is one of the drivers, even as for us as people, right? Like,
well, but I don't want it
say,
to be a driver because there's so much
Sure.
negativity. I don't want to kill a lot of people to make
but
scientific
it's how it
advancements.
works. Like,
But it
for
doesn't
example,
have to work that way.
But it does because it's human nature, right?
Then
Like,
where has
say
been our
it's-
major conflict over the past 20 or 30 years that's driven so much of our computer-related technological advancements?
the Second World War?
No, over the last like
That's-
20 or 30 years.
But I mean, there wouldn't be any computers if it wasn't for the Second World War.
Yeah, but the
right?
computers that existed back then, like I could do the calculations almost that those things were doing, and they were a room full. Like what led to the microprocessor?
No. Like, like I don't know much about it. I've seen that the fucking movie, right? I don't know how true it is, but it it was rated pretty good. So I guess there's
what
some
movie?
truth to it. The Imitation Game.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, like I said, like military R&D gives us a lot of technology, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have to be at war to invest money into getting there.
Right, but that's what I'm getting at. It's a driver. It's just like you're saying, right? You prioritize the things that matter, but sometimes things prioritize themselves, right? If terrorism was a big enough threat, then that becomes a priority. I don't know. I just think that there's always has to be a balance between like good and bad, and that you can strive towards good, and we should. But I think it's idealistic and kind of naive to think that the
Science
divisions
equals
will
blood
stop
for
or
the
that
blood
culture
But
God.
that's
will
not
cease.
true. I mean, the world today is doing better than it ever has in all of human history. Less people are dying from bad childbirth and malnutrition.
Right,
More
but
people are moving into the middle
pyramids are
class.
still in Egypt, right? That's That's their history. That's no
But
one's
who
gonna
cares
take
about the
that away from them.
pyramids? Like
Because they share something, Stephen, like as a people, right? That bonds them together, and that's meant to create common and shared goals. And whenever they conflict with anyone else's goals, they have to take opposite sides.
they don't know, but that's not true. Like what we right now we have like a world culture. Like I can go to any country in the world right now probably and talk to somebody that's 20 years old and say, "Can you sing Gangnam Style?" And they could probably do it, right? Or go to any country almost in the entire world and say, "Have you seen like James Bond?" Right? These are people like our culture is pervasive across the entire world. I don't think we necessarily have to divide ourselves by these arbitrary lines. I don't think.
Yeah, but check it. Like if fuck.
Like I guess like when you say that like war created like things like computers and stuff, like
Yeah.
we got the invention of computers, but war isn't giving you i5s and i7s, right? The computers that we have today are infinitely more powerful than what we had before. Why?
But they only exist because of war.
But not the computers that we have
that's the
today.
point.
Like using your argument, couldn't you argue that computers should have stopped evolving then as soon as the Cold War ended? Like even the technological advances we made in the past
No,
decade.
of course not. What I'm arguing is that when there is a need, when you are, it's like in StarCraft. When you're at stress, you're at your best, right? That's a thing of humanity. It's a driver. It's how we work. Like if there's no fear, then I don't think that if without sadness, I think the levels of happiness would be much lower, right? So I think that from that perspective, it's just yeah, like conflict isn't necessarily bad, and people have to ultimately be selfish for themselves, just like you are always going to be selfish for yourself because that's what your perspective of the world is going to be, right? Like you're limited to what you see, so you're going to be more attached to your family and to your city than you are to anything else. That's like basketball teams in the United States is a good example of that.
I mean, you can be drawn
Right.
to certain things without hating other people, though.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is that's probably inevitable, right?
I
Because
mean,
there's
I'm drawn to
always-
certain things, and I don't hate other people.
there's always going to be conflict, Stephen. Like that's why governments exist, right? To look
No.
out for what's best
Yeah, but
for
governments
the
also
nation.
exist to facilitate, civilization. It doesn't have to be to facilitate war. Like,
Sure. I mean, I agree with that. Like it doesn't have to be war, but there's always going to be conflict of some kind. Like the Cold War wasn't people killing each other, but it was still very much a fucking
I mean, we can compete
race.
with each other in scientific R&D, or compete with each other to make the best processors, or compete with each other in other ways too. It doesn't have to be violent conflict, I don't think.
It still is. I mean, there's still violence in the Cold War, right? It's not comparable to something that might extinguish humanity, but then there's other issues that rise, like population control, right? As ugly as that is. War's not super bad. Like okay, here's a really kind
Wait,
of
I
fucked
think
up
war is
example.
really bad. What do you mean?
It's not always, man. Like I think that humanity is driven by their state of happiness and such, right? And I think that war sometimes incites the best in humanity as well. I think that there is a balance, that's all.
I guess, but it does it at great cost. I don't know. I feel like we could try to
Like
decide it
for
without...
example, okay, like an ugly example is 9/11, okay? But like if you view humanity as a whole, which seems to be like almost what you're proposing, right? As a single organism rather than a divided state. There are positives that come to humanity from 9/11, as horrible of an act as it is.
But I think there were more
that-
negatives that came from 9/11. Look at the Patriot Act. Look at Trump
how
today
many-
could argue came from 9/11. Like,
Sure. Yeah, those
or
are
the
consequences.
entire war in the Middle East came from 9/11. Going to Iraq, the second Gulf War. Like, how are these good things that came from 9/11? What good things came from 9/11?
Well, you're arguing for what's bad for the United States as a country, right? While advocating for a world society.
Well,
So,
what was
like,
good for
who's
9/11
to
at all?
say- For example, I think that, okay, I'll tell you, this is anecdote. Again, I'm not trying to debate you on this. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to, give you my perspective. When I saw 9/11, right, for me, watching the acts of kindness of people after the fact was very reassuring in my faith in humanity. Like I felt more connected to people. I felt, like giving more, like trying harder. Like what I'm getting at is like there's a balance. If I think that if those acts of kindness and that bonding affected, I don't know, like 30% of the population of the world, as horrible as it is to say, at the cost of a much lesser percentage, maybe it's not all bad, right? As if you view humanity as a whole, if you take a few steps back.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of bad that came from 9/11. I mean, our entire war in the Middle East, almost everything right there going on today, a lot of that has to do with that war in Iraq.
Is the war in Iraq? Do you? I don't know what your stance is on this, but do you think it's entirely because of 9/11, or was 9/11?
Oh yeah, entirely.
Excuse?
Oh yeah, for sure. We needed a major terrorist attack to get drawn over there, I think.
Okay, but was that the excuse? Like, was the war? Because what I think is, the U.S. wasn't like, oh, fucking rage quit, motherfucker. I think it's like, it's a careful evaluation and being like, hey, like this could be good for us, right, for our economy.
Crash a plane into this shitty argument.
Wait, you think the war was good for our economy?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the intent at the time might have been from the U.S., right, as a nation, to get something positive out of this, rather than just revenge, right?
I don't think anything positive came out of Iraq.
Oh, but that's irrelevant, right? Because the intent is like just because 9/11 justifies the war, it doesn't mean that it had to justify the war. It was just that what the U.S. thought was in their best interest. It backfired, but it was still like the decision of the U.S. thinking that it would be best for the U.S.
Wait, I don't understand. Wait, maybe I'm a little lost. When you say it was the best for the U.S., why did the U.S. think it was in its best interest to go to Iraq, or how was it?
No, I'm asking you. Was it like I'm saying there must be more of a reason than just a flat out vendetta, right? I doubt it's just fucking fuck him up, like let's go, Rambo man.
I think
right?
that after 9/11, I think that Bush could have pointed his finger at almost any country in the world, and we probably would have gone to war with them because Iraq probably had nothing to do with Al Qaeda.
Sure, but then there's the oil and shit like that, right? That makes the whole thing a bit murky.
Well, but we don't really get any oil from Iraq.
Right, but I'm saying like the start of this war, right? Not the consequences, but
even before the war, like we get most of our oil from I think Canada and then domestic drilling.
And I think there's Venezuela too, I think. Or is there? No, Venezuela hates us, huh?
I'm not even sure. All I know is OPEC and Canada.
Okay. Yeah, but so you think that we went to war at first just to
it was over the terrorist
thirst of vengeance? Like if I'm just asking if that's what you think, right? Like if
Canada and Mexico, I'm sorry. I think that I think it was because of the 9/11 stuff.
We just raged into war. There was no ulterior motive.
I think so.
There was no benefits we had. Okay.
Well, yeah, I think so.
If that's your position, then that's
well, after
right.
the first Gulf War, the Bush senior administration said as much that going into Iraq and the mission creep and destabilizing that country would lead to catastrophic, unforeseeable blowback. That it would be a horrible idea. I mean, that was the Bush senior position. That's why the first Gulf War didn't have us depose Saddam and take over Baghdad.
What did the government say?
What do you mean?
Did they ever claim that there was any positive that was gonna come out of this other than revenge?
No, it was American freedom. We were spreading our American values. That was literally our thing when we went. Were you in the United States when we went to war? I don't remember.
Might have been. I mean, I was through or during war. Yeah.
That would have been in like 2000. Fuck, when did we go to Iraq? Like 2002, I think.
I've been here for like 10 years. So,
yeah. Okay, so. Yeah, so no. But it was mainly that. We were going to them and we said, they had weapons of mass destruction and we were going to go and fuck them up because of terrorism and shit. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. If that's a position, then there's no argument there.
Sure. A lot of people are
Okay.
really mad in chat because they're saying that computers were invented before war, but they were only used because of the war. The Alan Turing guy was actually a professor that had studied and was working on computers, and he was drawn into the military because of that. But the computers weren't invented because of the war.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how accurate the movie is. In the movie, it would appear as if, this was the first fucking, like, they had to create this computer and it took fucking billions of funding. So if they made that up for the movie, then that's great.
Usually military stuff usually involves funding stuff more, especially if it's a
Well,
military.
it was like 20 billion or something, right? Like, it was a secret project that, according to the movie, is basically what won the war. So it was a little bit more of an investment than one dude in his basement,
Oh yeah, of course, sure. I mean, nuclear things did the same for World War II, right? The fact that we got the smartest scientists working on researching nukes and all that shit, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, man. I don't know. I'm always for culture as well, because I think that. What do you think? Do you think that we are the product of, or do you not care for like fundamental questions of like why do we exist and such?
No, I think those are important questions. I mean, I don't really talk about it as much because we're usually talking about political things, but.
Yeah. So do you think the world is like deterministic?
Like,
do you think everything's predetermined, or do you think you have free will?
Oh, that's a really deep question. I guess I probably lean more towards the side that it's probably deterministic, yeah. Although it's probably impossible to measure all the starting conditions, but.
Yeah, it's some crazy shit. Yeah. Well, if you ever want to talk about shit like that, I'd be.
Wait, why? Do you think we're deterministic or non-deterministic?
Deterministic as well, I think. It's most likely. But there's like a lot of fucking really cool studies and shit happening right now with Hadron Collider and such. Like, they're gonna turn it. Do you know about that shit?
I know what the Large Hadron Collider is, yeah.
Yeah, so we're searching to validate one of two theories, right? Either supersymmetry, which could lead more towards I think a deterministic universe. I'm not sure how that relates actually, so don't quote me on that. And then there's the other one that's the theory of multiverse, right? And this all was hinging on something like don't quote me on this, like something like the levels of energy of the particle that they were looking to discover with the Hadron Collider. I saw this on a fucking Netflix documentary, right?
Gotcha.
And then basically, if they discovered the particle and it was 1.45, it would mean that most likely the theory of multiverse would be true, and then all physics that humanity has done, go to shit basically, because we would never be able to know past what's within our universe, and that would imply that there's like particles or some shit like in other universes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I gather from it. Again, I'm not an expert in the subject.
Sure. Even if there were things like that made the quantum realm a little bit unpredictable, that really wouldn't have any statements on free will, right? Like, let's say that I make the argument that the universe is 100% deterministic, and then let's say that you make some weird QM argument about how wave functions don't collapse or something, and everything that could happen has happened. It doesn't really make any statements on free will, right? Even if there was some weird randomness that existed, it's not like you can exert control over that randomness, right? Like, let's say you wanted to make a decision about whether to go left or right, and somebody argued that it was purely deterministic, and then somebody argued, no, it's not deterministic. Some of these choices might arise by randomness in the QM world. None of those are free will, right?
Right. I think the QM world, it like separates it from the universe, what Athene calls the objective reality.
Athene has
right?
no idea what he's talking about anything having to do with physics. QM is our current understanding of physics. It's not normal physics in QM. QM is what we know to be physics today, and almost all of our understanding of classical physics can be derived from QM.
Right. What I'm saying is Athene thinks, right, objective reality is basically what we can see and measure, and then what you're proposing is that there's a randomness factor, and for a randomness factor to to exist, it would have to not be governed by the laws of our universe,
Well,
like the
not
physics.
necessarily. You could argue that there's some. I mean, this gets really deep, but I don't think that just because randomness exists on the quantum level means that all classical physics gets thrown out, or everything past that or whatever gets thrown out.
Sure.
Right. But again, like even if this is true or false, like it says nothing on the existence of free will, right? Like you have no way to
for free will to exist, it would have to exist outside of our universe. So if the multiverse was true, then free will could exist. For
Wait,
instance.
why?
Because basically what Athene proposes, right? Like there's like he's not, retarded. Like he's kind of crazy and shit. But
he's not intelligent at all. He doesn't know anything about what he's talking about. You know this, right? Athene has no academic background on any of these topics. He can't name any of the researchers. He can't break down any of the equations. He doesn't know any of the math. I probably took more math than Athene has taken in his life in my second year of high school.
Sure.
Like Athene is not knowledgeable on any of these topics. He can't really discuss any of them at length or depth. But what was the thing you were going to reference?
Basically the universe is or would be in a deterministic universe, right, be governed by reality, right, like by nature, by the laws of physics, by these things that we're always trying to understand and that we can observe, right? These are ideas that are just ideas, right? Because we can't know one way or the other. So I don't think you have to be well versed to think on these topics. Right, you can just observe as well. Like there might be philosophers that came a while back, but that doesn't mean that thought has to die with them or with the study of them, right?
Wait, what do you mean?
I mean that I've heard you before, for example, say that just because Albert Einstein thought the same thing as or thought the same thing as Spinetta, that his say has no bearing because he was not a philosopher.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. But what is philosophy really, right? It's just thinking about this shit if you think about it. And Einstein is pretty fucking good at thinking.
Okay, this is a really common misconception.
There's philosophy and there's the study of philosophy, in academia.
Well, the study of philosophy is a well-understood, rigorous study of systems of logic and ways of understanding things. And there are specific doctrines of thoughts that are written out by specific philosophers that have books and detail different ways of approaching things and how we interpret. Right? Philosophy is a very specific study. It's not just randomly thinking about things, right?
But it kind of is. Like there's gonna be multiple schools of thought within philosophy, right? Like it's not as simple as, okay, these are the answers because this is what we figured out. It's more like, hey, this could be an option. Hey, this could be an option. This could be an option. This could be an option. This could be an option, and that's just through observation.
Yeah,
right?
but you have to. But philosophy has its own like rules within it that you have to play by in order to define your philosophy. Like, I'm sure that if you went up to any philosopher and said, hey, this is my philosophy, then they would put you through a way to justify it, right?
I'm not saying that Athene is equipped to...
Oh, no, I'm just saying because what you're saying, and I know you're not trying to make it sound that way, but what you're saying, I think, is very insulting to the field of philosophy, that it's just random people thinking and anybody can have any idea. Like, there is a decent amount of...
Okay, here's the thing that I believe. I believe that different people are... And do different things and approach things differently, and everyone contributes. That's one of the reasons for which I think that, for example, culture should be preserved, because I think that people coming from different rivers of thought are going to contribute different thinking, right?
Yeah,
because
but what's wrong with getting different ways of thinking from other people? Maybe some ways are better. Like the idea of a democracy is something that we got from the Aztec people. That wasn't even a white dude idea.
Right. Which is part of why I would be against a globalized society, right?
Okay.
Because I think that culture contributes to evolution in that it makes us different, in that it separates us. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Like, for example, working on the Hadron Collider, there's people from 100 different countries, right? It adds to the discussion to have different perspective rather than the same, which is what ends up happening when you continue to conform, right? So I think it's always about finding a healthy balance rather than saying, okay, like this is good, let's fucking do it, right? All we should do is fucking think about globalization as a good thing and fucking involve the entire world in this mantle of light, right? It's like that's basic. Isn't that basically communism, but for at a world scale? If you
Well,
think about it,
communism is a form of government,
right?
And,
No,
and,
but
and
but
it
that's
gets into
the
like
idea,
economic
right?
stuff.
The
Wait,
idea
fuck.
of it, I mean,
Hold on.
like, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Because socialism deals more with the economics, and communism is also a form of political stuff too. Okay, I was making sure I didn't fuck that up. Okay, I'm sorry. Say that one more time. Or what were you saying?
So wouldn't that be kind of communist, to put it a certain way?
I mean, just because you have like easy immigration and easy trade and whatnot doesn't necessarily mean that everybody all across the world becomes the same person, right?
It could if the world was deterministic and we were to live in the same exact environment eventually, right?
Well, determinism has nothing to do with whether or not we all end up the same.
Okay, so what would determine things in a deterministic world is these patterns that rule the universe, like the laws of physics and such, right? So our bodies are mostly chemicals reacting to our environment, right? And our perception is limited also to our environment, which is like why we end up, for example, caring for first, your mom and then your friends and then, people that you went to school maybe. And, it's your perception. Like, yeah.
I mean, I even if you have similar cultures, things aren't going to be exactly identical in all areas, right? Like, I grew up in the same neighborhood
Right.
as some other kids that went to the same school, that live in the same city, same state, but we can still be vastly different, right?
Right. They're still right. But at which point do you stop conforming is the question, right? That's why I'm saying it's always a balance. Because at one point, you eliminate culture and then you start, for example, eliminating like family values, right? Because everyone should have the same values, right? We can agree upon values as a society. So at what point do you stop the merger into becoming the same person? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Even if we share similar values, we can still have pretty different people, no? I mean, there's going to be some genetic variation and whatnot.
Yeah, there's biology, right, and an environment that makes a person. So biology, I think it's partly or fully actually just environment. Again, this is my thought. Like, I haven't studied philosophy and shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as I see it, as I can observe it,
Settle down.
if
but
you
I'm
you get your DNA from your parents, right? And then from their parents, and goes on and on until, if you believe in evolution, the first single cell that would become humanity, right?
Okay.
So that single cell will be just molded by its environment, by its surrounding. Agree? Like
Sure.
evolution through trial and error will basically like dispose, make it try to survive its environment.
Okay.
So that single cell will eventually become humanity. Agreed? So and DNA is passed on from person to person, right? As humanity grows.
Okay.
So my argument is that biology is also really just our environment, except it's like our parents' environment, like our past environment, if you will, right? And our environment is also forged, for example, by culture. Like, I think that, and again, I think that there's arguments to be made for both sides, right? Like, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson would agree with you, for instance. But there's other people that would agree with me, right? That it's best to keep us separated to an extent, because culture is not a necessary evil. Culture pushes us and drives us. Like, for example, take natural resources, for instance, right? And again, this is through observation, but beer is gonna be the German national drink, right? Because they produce beer. And this is just an example of how nationalism like helps, right? Like in Peru, for instance, pisco is the man's drink because men drink the most, and that's what you want to sell the most because it's like what will help the country grow because the country is looking after its own interest rather than Germany's buying their beer. Even though this is a silly example because Germany like beer is everywhere, right?
Mhm.
But you can say vodka instead or rum for Jamaica or whatever else, right? So I think that there are stances to be taken on both sides.